Welcome back to another episode of the Deep Ditching Podcast. We are playing a home game today. That's right. We are back here in Houston at Sacred Stone Studios for the first time shooting an episode here at home. LA was wonderful to us the first two episodes, and I hope to be back there very soon. Today's episode is 35 years in the making, and when I tell you that I've been such a huge fan of my guest today, since I was 12 or 13 years old. He's not only a legend in the college basketball world, but he is also a legend when it comes to motivating people, as you're going to see today. This episode is going to be a clinic about life, and it's my hope, my wish that you're going to gain a lot of wisdom today, a lot of tools, a lot of life lessons that are going to make you better for listening to this episode. So I promise you this is one that you are going to want to share with other people, which I would greatly appreciate. And but I could have a conversation for hours with this man. Everything that I've read in his books, everything that I know about him, I could go on and on and on with him, and I'm hoping I will. But the three books that I've read that he has written, the first one is called Tiger in a Lion's Den, Adventures in LSU Basketball, which chronicles his extraordinary life and career. The second one is Dale Brown's Memoirs from LSU Basketball, which provides so many wonderful stories from his time at LSU, a lot of great anecdotes, just a lot of insight behind-the-scenes stories during his coaching career at LSU. And the final one, which is what we're going to focus on today, is Getting Over the Four Hurdles of Life. I think this should be required reading for everyone, corporations, high schools, colleges. I promise you, when you read this book, you're going to be better for it. It is full of lessons, full of wisdom that I think you're going to want to share with people, whether it's young, older, no matter where you're at in your life. This book is definitely for you. So I'm so proud today to have the opportunity to bring into your life and to the Deep Ditching Podcast the legendary LSU basketball coach, Dale Brown.
He's our man. If he can't do it, nobody can.
Coach, can you hear me better now?
I can hear you perfectly.
Wonderful. Coach, again, this is your buddy Tommy in Houston, and I am so happy to have you on. So happy to have you on.
I'm glad to be on with you, and any question you want, throw it at me.
Coach, I've got so many. I wish we could have the entire day to do it, but I really want to respect your time today. But I could go on for hours and hours talking to you. I've read your books, and I've just got so much to talk about, so much on my mind, and I know you'll be able to answer every single question.
Tommy, there's a new book.
Yes.
I don't know if you ever heard of this. A guy from Louisiana, his name is Trent Andrews, and he was runner-up for the Pulitzer Prize for My Lai Massacre.
Okay.
He wrote a new book, and it is outstanding.
Well, I'm going to have to look that one up. Coach, I love to read. Our buddy Pat, our mutual friend Pat Boris, who got us connected, he told me how...
I can give you his number if you want. He can maybe send you a book.
You know what? How about you have my email? Why don't you email it to me, or I'll email you requesting that. Okay. How's that? And we can do that.
That sounds good.
Wonderful. Well, Coach, I want to talk about Shaq to start off just for a moment, if you don't mind. My audience who's watching, you don't have to really be a sports fan to know who Shaquille O'Neal is, right? You've most certainly heard his name. You've seen him in dozens of commercials. But your story of how you met Shaq, I know there are probably a lot of people in my audience who don't know the story, but I love hearing you tell it. I know you've told it a million times. Would you mind telling that story for my audience who does not know it? It's such a great story.
I'd be happy to do it.
Perfect. Thank you.
It's a story everybody should listen to. Now, it's Tommy, not Tony.
It's Tommy. Yes, sir.
I called you Tony.
It's okay. It's okay.
I just hung up with a guy by the name of Tony Tate. That's why.
Coach, you call me whatever you want today. You call me anything you want.
Oh, you're in trouble. I'll call you prodigious and sagacious. You know what that means?
I know the words. Yes, sir.
Well, then I'm going to call you prodigious and sagacious.
You come whatever you want.
All right, Tommy. I'm ready to roll.
All right, so let's go with the story about Shaq and how you met Shaq.
My meeting with Shaq's been asked many times, and it was really a strange situation. The State Department got a hold of me, and it was during the Berlin Wall. and they were going to mass 80,000 new troops on the East German border to intimidate the communists that we aren't leaving Germany. We're taking this area. We're helping these people out. Don't come in. So this guy that called me said, would I be willing to start in southern Germany and work my way up the whole coast? And then we got a cracked armor division right on the German border, and it's in a place called Wildflecken. And I said, well, how many days is this going to take? He said, well, we got so many bases and what have you, and he told me the dates, and I said, fine. So I really was fatigued. It was a very difficult job. I had to move from one base to another, and I probably was in my, I don't know how many speeches. I can't give you an exact number right now, but I finally got into Wildflecken, and I thought, oh, it's my last speech. I'm elated. And I was packing my little bag to go back to the hotel and put my stuff in it and the rest of my stuff and get back to Baton Rouge, and I get a tap on the shoulder. And I turn around, and here's this man, I would say, and this is a nebulous guess here, 6'9", maybe 225, 230. And he stuttered real bad. Coach Brown, I'll be trying out for the team here. And he said, I can't dunk a ball. And I run up and down the court about 3 or 4 times. And he said, my lower extremities tire. And I thought, lower extremities? This is a young guy's pretty sharp. And he said, can you show me any weight training programs to build this up? And I said, do you have a gym here? He said, yeah, we do. He said, in fact, my dad's in there right now. And I said, okay. I said, but how long you been in service, soldier? Big old smile. He says, Coach, I'm not in service. I said, you're not? He said, I'm only 13 years old. I said, what's your name? He said, Shaquille O'Neal. So I said, well, I'd like to meet your father. So we go to the sauna, and just as I was putting my hand on the sauna door, it bursts open, and the guy comes up with one of those military towels around his neck. Being in the military, we used to have those green towels. And he said, that's my dad. That's my dad. So his dad came out sweating profusely, and I took out my card, and I said, Sergeant Harrison, I said, my name's Dale Brown. I'm the basketball coach at LSU. And I said, your son's inquired about some information about weight training and what have you. And I said, we'd be glad to send it to him. And he said, excuse me, Coach Brown. And he had my business card, looking over the top of it almost with disdain. And he said, this is all fine and good basketball. But he said, I think it's darn time African Americans get education. He said, now I'm an educated man. That's why I'm in the Army, Coach Brown. He said, if you can guarantee that you'll mentor my son and you'll be the dad away from home and get him his education, he said, we're going to talk again. And I said, okay. And well, Shaquille told me he was trying out for the base team. So weeks pass, I get a letter, UPS from Wildflecken, Germany. And basically, I can't repeat the letter, obviously, word for word, but I can remember most of it. Dear Coach Brown, I did everything you told me to do. And my high school coach cut me off the team. He told me I'm too slow, I'm too clumsy, I have too big a feet, I never could be a basketball player. Why don't I be a goalie in soccer? What should I do, Coach Brown? Man, I laid the letter down. I thought, what kind of a profound statement am I going to make to a 13-year-old child thousands of miles across the water? I thought, hell, I'm going to tell him about my life. Because I had no father and poor family like he did. And this was a stepfather.
Right.
And I said, here's the deal. If you always try to do your best and never give up under any conditions. Sooner or later, God will take care of everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And only you will know if you're doing it.
Right.
I wish you the best of luck. Contact me anytime. Well, that coach, by the way, that cut him off the team, if you got a television set, he's coaching on the planet Jupiter. Well, he then transferred to the United States, to San Antonio, and he really developed.
Right.
And he was a smart student. I said he stuttered. And one day he came in my office, set up an appointment. Coach Brown, I can't take that speech class. I said, why is that? I stutter. So you can't take it, huh? I said, well, you're going to have to transfer then, because I said, I'm the one that books the schedule around here, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to transfer. And I said, well, it's important you take it, Shaquille. And this was a nebulous thing I said. I said, someday, I don't know how good a basketball player you're going to be, but you might be a great speaker. So now let's run the clock ahead. I put him in the class, and he's unhappy about it. But after 2 weeks, he has to give a speech in front of the whole class. So he comes to me and he said, would you come up at 8 o'clock in the morning and listen to my speech? And he said, I'd really appreciate it. So I went and listened to his speech, gave him a critique, and I told him, you're going to have a future. You're sincere. I said, you underestimate yourself. But I said, I really believe if you'll follow my instructions, and I said, that's going to class every day. It's going to this speech class. I know it's 8 o'clock in the morning and you hate it. But I said, you do that, and I'll promise you, greatness will meet you.
Mm.
Well, my guy that does all the checking of academics, my assistant coach, Johnny Jones, called me about 4 days later. He says, guess what? I said, what? He said, Shaquille missed class today.
Mm-mm.
We had a deal that you'd have to get up at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, I forget. We'd run until they couldn't run, and give them another chance. And if they didn't go to class then, because I wasn't producing. When I came here, I had 2 goals. LSU had 14 out of 18 losing seasons.
Mm-hmm.
So one of my goals was to turn LSU into a basketball powerhouse. Now, that was hilarious to most people.
Right.
The second goal was all the young men that I was responsible for, I would be able to improve their lives
Mm-hmm.
by getting them educated and a degree. So I next day I said I'm going to get Sheila up, and make him run. So 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm up there. I'm pressing on his chest. What? And he opened up. It was Shaquille. He scared me. I said, get up, put your sweat stuff on. We're going out in the track. I said, 5 o'clock in the morning, you're going to run until you learn. I promised your mother and father, and your mama especially, and your daddy, I'm not going back on it. I do everything in my power to see you graduate. So we're going out on the track. So 6 o'clock comes. And I've done everything with him. He's, Coach, I can't do it anymore. Well, where are you transferring to? I'm not transferring, Coach. Well, you said you can't do it anymore. So if you're not doing it anymore, you're defying the rule.
Mm.
I'll do it, I promise you. Needless to say, I never had another time he missed the class. He graduated. He got his master's degree. He wound up with a doctorate degree. And he's probably, and this is not embellished at all, he probably is the most benevolent young man I've ever met in my life.
Mm-hmm.
He did the darndest things to help people and didn't make it. After he started making money in the NBA, he was giving it away, helping people, and he still does.
Right.
But he's a beautiful human being. His father's stepfather, he is. But his mother was the glue of the family.
Right.
She called me, and to show you how you can encourage people, not with false talking to them or giving them BS, but she said, Coach, she said, I'm uneducated to an extent. And she said, they approached me and want me to be president of the Mothers NBA Association. Do you think I can do that? Absolutely. Well, how am I going to do that? I don't give speeches. I'll help you. So she became the president of the organization. She wrote a book that's absolutely fantastic. Act like you know where you're going someplace. I think that's the name of it. Mm-hmm. It's really a good book. So it's a very interesting story. He, a lot of his stuff, of course, he lets him film them if he goes into a store to buy something.
Sure.
A little kid, he'll buy bicycles too. But he's bought one of his former players that was having a tough time, played with him at LSU. Didn't have a vehicle. Bought him a brand new van. So he's just a good human being.
Just has a huge heart. Just a huge heart. So when you look back at that first day that you laid eyes on him and up until today, how much pride do you have for Shaq?
I had basketball was my salvation. My father abandoned my mother 2 days before I was born. He never came back. She came off a farm in Minot, North Dakota. Mm-hmm. We moved into a one-room apartment above a bar and a hardware store. She went on welfare for $42.50 a month. She became a maid and a babysitter for 50 cents an hour. We bought all of our clothes in rummage sales. But I saw how that woman worked. And she taught me something that I never, ever forgot. She went to babysitting. I was 9 years old. Waited up, no television, no radio, no nothing. I did a lot of reading. Mm-hmm. She came home and she made cocoa and cinnamon toast for us. That was a big deal, being so poor with food stamps and all that. And she said, I've got something to tell you, Dale. And I'm really ashamed of this. And I thought, my mother's ashamed of something? Mm-hmm. She doesn't drink. She doesn't smoke. She doesn't take drugs. She's never dated. She's never talked about the man that left her. What could it be? Little minds working. She said, when these big shots come to pick me up, I'm so self-conscious that they'll smell the mothballs in my clothes, because we bought all our clothes at rummage sale. Mm-hmm. She said, they'll say, well, where'd you go to college? And I don't want to say 8th grade. What's your husband do? She said, I don't want to say he abandoned us. Mm-hmm. So she said, son, I go look up big words in the dictionary. Mm. Then I put them on a 3x5 card. I study them the whole week before I go clean their homes or babysit them, their children. But she said, I keep the card with me so I control the conversation. So she said, son, don't do that. You know why? I'm trying to make an image. And Dale, don't do that in your life. Because if you spend too much time polishing your image, you'll eventually tarnish your character and be an unhappy man. You speak from your heart, not your head. Mm-hmm. That was from an 8th grade mama. So,
Coach, the books the 3 books of yours that I've read, and I saw your documentary on YouTube, and a very prominent word that I hear or read in each of your books and saw in the documentary was the word injustice. Can you talk about how important that word injustice has been to you in your life?
It was, I saw it from the very beginning. I saw how poor people were treated. I saw the fact that she had no power, she had no education, no money. So I saw injustice even with my mother. How they handled her. They wouldn't come up and pick her up. She'd have to stand down by the door. It was cold and 35 below zero in Minot. It was an injustice. And so from my early age, I thought, I have learned from my mother more things, and she wasn't a preacher. She wasn't a bragger. I just watched her how she lived.
Right.
She did things silently. So the old statement, I'd rather see a lesson than to hear one any day.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather you walk with me than to merely show the way. The eye's a better teacher and more willing than the ear. And the counsel you are giving may be very fine and true, but I'd rather get my examples by observing what you do. That's what I got from my mama.
Well, Coach, when we talked the very first time, I told you that, I'm an elementary school teacher, and I teach a class in social and emotional learning for elementary kids. And
I was an elementary teacher.
Yeah, you sure were.
Berkeley, California.
Yep, that's exactly what I read. And so, we had that in common. So the kids that I teach, they come from, low income families. And my worry is that, a lot of the boys are growing up without their fathers, right? Or growing up, without stable families. And
75% of African Americans have no father.
Yes, absolutely. And so, so this week I brought you up. I used you as an example. I talked to my fifth graders about you in the context of how your first day of your life started, right? Because you started, like you said, at a deficit without your father. And that's how a lot of these kids are starting their lives or growing up in circumstances that they can't control. But what I learned from the 4 hurdles of life, which I want to talk about in a little bit, you have the choice to make of what you have been through, right? To make the best of what you've been through.
There's no question.
Mm-hmm.
The French, and I love to read. I've read stuff, I don't know what I'm reading about. I'll read about outer space that interests me. But I found, Tommy, that the French have a word called idée fixée, which simply means what you fix in your mind and make it happen. Not wish it happens, but you will it happen. Mm-hmm. It will happen. Now, I'll give you an example of that. All my friends told me to don't take this job. It's a dead end. They've had 14 out of 18 losing seasons. It's a football school. You're making a major mistake going down there. Now, I never dreamed I'd ever wind up in the South. My wife grew up 2 miles from the Canadian border.
Right.
I grew up near the Canadian border in North Dakota. Never dreaming. The South to me was, seeing German Shepherd dogs and police beating people with bayonets, and so I had a bad impression. Mm-hmm. It was sorry that I did, because there's so many good people I found here. But when I got here, I had literally zero material. I had 3 losing seasons in a row.
Mm-hmm. And a local TV guy interviewed me. Now, I'm a no-name guy. They'd always say Minot, South Dakota, and Minot, South Dakota, Mm-hmm. And that was fine. Say whatever they want to. So he interviews me. You could do me a favor, he said. I know media days tomorrow, but you could really help me. I'm a TV guy. Let me come into the gym early and do it. So as a favor to him, I did it. Not expecting a favor back, but I did it as a favor to him. Kind of a smart aleck guy. So he starts the thing out by saying, Dale Brown, he said, a lot of people didn't think you were qualified for this job. You never were a head college coach. You never played Division I ball. You played NAIA. Now you've had 3 losing seasons in a row. And he said, frankly, there's a lot of people that are calling for you to be fired. How do you feel about that? I'm elated. And he said, what? I said, I'm elated. They're finally interested in basketball. They've been in a coma around here following football the whole time. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad. And we will win, and we will win instantly. Well, now, who am I? Houdini? Am I a sage? No. But you know what happened? We had 17 straight winning seasons. Mm-hmm. This is not narcissistic. Only one other coach in the SEC history ever had that,
Adolph Rupp.
Mm-hmm.
So it goes back to Idée Fixé. Also, I'm proud to say, one of our goals was fulfilled. We graduated 80% of the players that played for me.
Right. So, Coach, let me ask you.
So it gave me a lot. I wanted to give back, and I saw a lot of those kids. And then the NCAA. I almost got out of coaching because of the NCAA.
Mm-hmm. Right.
The NCAA supposedly stood for National Collegiate Athletic Association. But that isn't what it was. It was not caring about athletes. They were money hungry. They were giving athletes a scholarship to go to school. Now, many of these children, if they were from California and their mother died, we couldn't fly them home or drive them home for the funeral.
Mm-hmm.
Many of them had battered tennis shoes. We couldn't buy them a new pair of shoes. Now, of course, our salaries were terrible. And I'll tell you a story about John Wooden's salary in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, when I took this job, my salary was $20,000.
Jeez.
Now, of course, it's $10 million. But
yeah.
John Wooden told me when he graduated and when he retired at LSU, I'm going to give you a test. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Here it is. After 27 years, Tommy, what was his salary?
Oh, gosh. It was, if I remember, it was below, wasn't it below $10,000? I mean,
$32,500.
Okay, $32,000. I was way off.
Now, to show you how things have changed also, this is not a test for you. So if somebody's listening to the program and say, what the hell's Dale turned into a teacher for Tommy? But here's another one that nobody knows to show you how times have changed.
Mm-hmm.
He won 10 national championships, 7 in a row. How many years, Tommy, was he at UCLA before he won one game, not a championship, one game in an NCAA tournament?
It was wasn't about 13. No, it was about 13, 14 years. Yeah, 14 years. That's right.
So nowadays he'd have been fired. Well, he only went on the next 13 years.
Mm-hmm.
That was his first 14 years.
Yeah.
Then he went on the next 13 years to win 10 national championships. So most athletic directors and far too many fans are too narcissistic and too impatient with coaches. And UCLA was smart enough to keep him. And he's one of the nicest human beings I've ever met. He was my tutor. He was my best friend in coaching.
Right. Well, and even in your documentary, you had that nice conversation, I guess, over lunch with them. I mean, what was that like? Because to be honest, Coach, that's kind of like the same experience that I'm having right now, having the opportunity to talk to you. Because like this conversation for me is about 35 years in the making. I think I told you that before, where I've started following LSU basketball when I was about 12 or 13 when Chris Jackson, now Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf came on the scene. That's when I became aware of you as well. And I do want to talk to him. I do want to talk about him later on. I do want to get into him. But like I said, though, the opportunity to have to talk to you has to be the same as you getting to spend time with John Wooden. I mean, that's how I feel, getting to talk to you. Because this is a very special moment
you're
for me.
being kind. I was just an old North Dakota hick that got lucky. I loved kids. I knew what it did for me. It gave me my first good self-image of myself. Mm-hmm. I had an inferiority complex being on welfare and food stamps and no father and no car, no bicycle. Lived in a one-room apartment of a bar and a hardware store for 21 years. The first 7 years, we had no toilet, no bath, no shower. We shamed with others. But for 21 years, I never slept in a bed. I slept in a couch, and my mother had a little bed that pulled out from the wall. But that place was meticulous, and I never heard her cry, whine, or moan. And the school I went to, times have kind of changed there, too. Here's another analogy, and this isn't meant to be narcissistic at all. I just was an honor student. I was the class president. I just broke the record in the quarter mile. I was the captain of the football team. Now basketball started. Well, I was considered. I wound up being the highest scorer in the history of college basketball. Played against Lute Olson, Roger Maris, two North Dakotans in high school. And what happened in my situation is I saw what, if you are successful beyond wanting to get more money or something. I mean, it's embarrassing when I look at the money I made in coaching. I didn't go into it for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I went into it. I wanted to help young men improve their lives. And sports, I tried to give them what my mother gave me. And today, now, this is bizarre, Tommy, that you call. The week you call, was it 2 weeks ago when you first called me?
Gosh, it's been probably, a few weeks, close to a month, to be honest with you. It's been that long.
Okay, a month.
Mm-hmm.
Shortly before that or after, I can't remember. I think it was after you called me. I get a call out of nowhere when we decided to leave North Dakota when we were starving. We didn't know what bill to pay.
Mm-hmm.
We put a 2-year-old daughter in the back seat, made a little bed for her, drove to California, didn't know one soul. We had to get a job. We only had one little Volkswagen. We had to get a job in the same town because we couldn't be miles apart. So my wife got a job at Berkeley High School, and I got a job, which I think is now Martin Luther King High School, which finally integrated as a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Shortly after you called me, I got a call from a guy I coached in junior high school in Garfield, in Berkeley, California, at Garfield School. Wow. And that really meant, I said, how did you track me down? Oh, I went through one friend. You have an unlisted number and whatever. That meant to me as much as if Shaquille called me in 5 minutes
and that's something.
Told me, let's have lunch.
How to remember the impact you've had. And, Coach, that takes me back to my own experience as a teacher. How can we motivate our younger generation today? Because to me, and it's my opinion, it seems like education has kind of taken almost a back seat to where it was, when you were in school, when I was in school. It doesn't seem like that sense of urgency to push education is what it used to be. I mean, is that something that you're seeing? I mean, how do we?
It isn't even close.
Yeah.
It's keep them eligible and get them out of here.
Right.
And now this name, image, and likeness. This is absolutely total insanity.
Mm-hmm.
Now the NCAA finally knew, and I was the one that hoped could break it. They were an organization that was selfish. It was racist at one time when they put in that Title IX, to keep the blacks out and et cetera. But the NCAA has created a monster here. Tommy and Dale are on the same team. Now, deductive reasoning tells you we both have egos,
mm-hmm.
vanity. We hope we can control it. Oftentimes we don't. Tommy's a little bit better than Dale, and I'm the other guard. You get $5 million. And this isn't embellished. I know a story.
Mm-hmm. You
get $5 million to do a BMW commercial. I get nothing. Don't tell me that eventually it's not going to crumble. That other guard's going to say, to hell with this. And where's this money coming from? It
mm-hmm.
could come from gamblers, drug dealers.
Mm-hmm.
Who's paying for all this? It's not the university. It's coming from somebody. So the system, did you ever meet Walter Byers, head of the NCAA?
No, sir, I did not. I have not.
Well, he was there the longest. He was there 35 years.
Okay.
And we went round and round and round, but near the end, he really, really turned into be a very candid and honest guy. So one day he called me and he said, Coach, he said, I'm going to write a book. And I'd like you to be in that book. Well, we didn't get along because I thought that he was a student that was really hurting us. So he, did you ever meet him, by the way?
No, sir, I did not.
He turned out to be a really, really a nice guy. But I want to read something to you. Let me grab it in my book here if I could.
Go ahead. Absolutely.
I I want to read some. Take me a minute to find it.
Not a problem. Take your time.
That he wrote now. This was the guy that was at the NCAA for 35 years, and he's the one that wrote this that I'm trying to read to you.
Okay.
Here it is. Let me get my glasses now so I can read it to you. This says a lot about the sport. He admitted, and I'm trying to find the page and I can't find it right now.
That's okay.
But he came out and just admitted it. The NCAA is way behind. It's an organization that cheats kids. Look, there's numerous kids, Tommy, over my years that have come with old battered tennis shoes. They didn't have a street shoe. And you couldn't even buy them a street shoe.
Mm-hmm.
So the system, at the end, he finally admitted that his system was wrong, and then he got real critical of the NCAA.
Mm. And was that because you finally kind of was able to drill it into his head, and he realized?
Yeah, loudmouth Brown, keep my mouth shut sometimes. and then there was a little vendetta then too. They thought a good way of shutting my mouth up. The NCAA used a former player of mine that I kicked off the team,
mm-hmm.
who was Earl and
Lester Earl.
Lester Earl, I mean,
mm-hmm.
Lewis was his brother,
mm-hmm.
and got him to make a statement that was totally false.
Right.
And but even Walter Byers just finally gave in and admitted what true leadership should be.
So,
and it can be such a beautiful sport. I mean, I think of what I learned from it.
mm-hmm.
Let me give you an example.
Go ahead.
I gave you a story and I interrupted myself. I get bored with what I'm saying and go to something else. So forgive me.
It's okay.
We're jumping around.
It's okay.
But
no, you're good.
You needed an eligibility slip to be turned into the office every Monday.
Mm-hmm.
So I had no trouble with it. So the ex-coach, this is a Catholic school now, who's a priest, he's on the telephone, and I come down, throw the eligibility slip down, and I'm heading out. Dale, hold on. He put his hand over the phone, and he said, stay here for a minute. So he finished talking to this guy, and he said, what is this? Now, that's kind of a funny question. I said, it's an eligibility slip. He said, what time was this eligibility slip due every Monday? I said, 1 o'clock. I was an honor student.
Mm-hmm.
He said, take a look at my clock up here. What time does that say? I said, 1:15.
Mm-hmm.
So we've established this. You knew this was an eligibility slip. You knew what time it was due, and you know the time, right? He said, well, you're not going on this next road trip. He takes my slip and cuts it, rips it in small pieces, throws it in the garbage can. I go upstairs. Oh, I'm not. I'm the class president. I just broke the quarter mile. I'm the football captain. I was the highest scorer in the history of North Dakota high school basketball. I'll be there. Yeah, I was there all right in the driveway. They drove off without me, and I was crying. I haven't been late since that time, and I've become so paranoid.
Yeah.
If Tommy calls me and wants to go to lunch, I'm going to meet Tommy DeMoss. If lunch is at 1 o'clock, I'll be there at 12:30, the earliest. I'm so paranoid.
Yep.
So we've lost. Sports can be such a great thing. Now it's money, greed. And the NCAA conned everybody. They knew they were going to have to give in. So they agreed to the name, image, and likeness. Well, who can be, no disrespect to the good people that are helping, but how come a drug dealer can't give a guy $5 million and he calls the shots on that guy?
Yeah. You know.
So it's a total mess, and it bothered the heck out of me.
What I found awful and disgusting really was the story about Mark Alcorn and what y'all had to deal with the NCAA with him and his situation and trying to get his friends.
Most chintzy thing I've ever felt in my life.
Yeah.
Here's a kid, Mark Alcorn, one of our former players from St. Louis. We're in the Alaskan shootout. He gets real sick. I won't let him play.
Mm-hmm.
He argues, I can play, and we get home and we get him checked, and he's loaded with cancer. So his mother and father come and pick him up and get him back to St. Louis. And so his mother called me after some time, and it didn't look like he was going to make it, but they were going to give it one more chance at MD Anderson in Texas. So she said, Coach, I'm really embarrassed to tell you this, but they're going to have a fundraiser for Mark here in St. Louis. Bob Costas is going to be there, and she named several other prominent coaches. And she said, is there any way you could bring, she said, Mark, we know, hasn't got long to live. Mm-hmm. So his dad and I went in his room and asked him, Mark, if you had one last wish, what would it be? Mama, he said, I want to see my three best friends. They were all three guys that were substitute guys, one from Louisiana, one from Texas, one from Australia. And she said, I'm embarrassed, but we just don't have the money to pay it. I'll work it out. So I called the NCAA, and I explained to them what the story was. And I can give you a word for word. I said, the child's dying. The mother called. I said, now the governor has agreed. I've talked to the governor to let us use the plane free of charge to fly him up there. You can't do that. What do you mean I can't do it? He said, the book was about 500 pages thick then. He said, turn to page 150 or whatever it was. He said, that's called entertainment off campus. I said, apparently I'm not speaking very clearly with my North Dakota accent. The boy is dying, and he wants to see his three best friends. And he says, well, you can't have anything to do with it. I said, well, you can go jump, whatever. I said, you can go jump in a river. I said, that they'll be there. As you turn yourself in, I said, you figure it out. And I hung up on the guy. So then I thought, now how am I going to do this? Because I'm kind of a big-mouthed guy. I'll say what I feel from my heart.
Good.
How am I going to do this without getting the university in trouble? So I found out there was a cheap flight and a place to stay at a cheap hotel. It would cost each kid $300. So without anybody else being involved, I got 3 envelopes, took my own money, $300, put in each envelope and instructions. I called one at a time in with the blinds closed, like I was some pimp or drug dealer or something. And I told him, listen, I'm breaking an NCAA rule to do this, but you've got to be there. So I gave them the $300. I said, here's the flight number. You make your own reservations. Well, they obviously were there. So when we got there, I thought, you know what? This makes me sick. I'm not a liar. My mother told me not to be a liar. You speak from your heart, son. When I got up to speak, I said, I had a pretty decent speech prepared, and I sort of lost concentration. I was so mad. I said, you know, I said, Mark's 3 best friends are here. I said, Andy Campbell, would you stand up? J. Brian Bazeron, would you stand up? Joe Costello, would you stand up? I said, those are Mark's 3 best friends. And I was requested. The mother wanted me to help get them here, and I brought them here illegally. I paid for it myself because the NCAA is too stupid, selfish, and ignorant to do things right. Do you know they never had any guts to do anything about it?
Not surprised.
They let it go.
It's like when you stand up to someone, coach, and you stand for your beliefs, then it's like the other, let's call it the bully, kind of what they were. They don't know what to do because they're not used to people standing up to them, and that's what you did all throughout your career.
Oh, no. And so then they tried to defame me by lying about Lester Earl. I kicked him off the team.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if you ever saw the statement he made.
I saw it. Absolutely, I did.
He finally came and said he lied for the NCAA. And now, guess who was at my house short time back for 2 hours? Lester Earl. Still apologetic. He's sorry about it. He was scared. He was young. Well, these kids are 17, 18.
Yep.
The NCAA is like the damn Gestapo, and I'll tell you about that. I get the chancellor to call me, real nice guy. And he said, Coach, he said, can you kind of let up on your rhetoric? He said, you're calling the Gestapo. And he said, that's not all I'm calling them. I'm telling them that they legislate against human dignity and practice monumental hypocrisy. He said, well, could you let up a little bit? He said, we're we're kind of in a situation where we're worried they're going to come in now and take our football team and get us on probation or something. And all I said to the chancellor was, thank you, I appreciate your participation. And I'll be damned. 2 days later, I get a call from a guy by the name of Larry Smith, I think was his name, from Sports Illustrated. Said he would coming in like to do a cover story on this controversy. Would you be open to do it? Absolutely. And so he came and I said, now, here's what you have the privilege of doing. I'm offering, because some of these things sound so unbelievably, they sound like fairyland, they're lies. I said, I'll be glad you can put a, what do you call the deals when they test them for truth and false?
Oh, the lie detector test.
Polygraph?
Polygraph, yep.
Yeah. You can put one on me. Well, that's not necessary, Coach. He said, but can I come down? We're interested in really getting to the bottom of this NCAA and you and why they're picking you because, you're talking about them. I said, sure. So he came down. Now, remember, this is just a day after the chancellor's called me. So the guy's here for 2 days, and he's packed up his bags. Coach Brown, this is the most candid interview I think I've ever had. I can't thank you enough. But he said, we've covered so much ground. Just in a couple words, how would you describe the NCAA? I said, Gestapo bastards.
Yeah.
Chancellor probably had a heart attack. But nobody wanted to take him on. There were 3 people that stood up. Nolan Richardson, John Thompson, and the Temple coach. What was the Temple coach's name?
John Chaney.
Don Chaney. They're the only 3 that stepped up and helped me.
No one else had the guts to do it.
I sure wish I could find this quote. If you want to take a couple minutes and let me look, I might be able to find it on Walter Byers. By the way, we became pretty good friends, Walter Byers and I. He called me and wanted me to write a piece in his book. And I could find this piece in here. I think you'd like it.
That's okay. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what, while you're looking for it, I don't, Pistol Pete, you came on right after he had left, right? You came to coach right after he had left. Given what he had gone through in his life, all the demons that he fought, all the pressure that he faced, and his the tragedy with his mother, and all these things. Coach, I'd always wondered if you had the opportunity to coach Pistol Pete, how would you have dealt with him? How would you have coached with him? How would you have dealt with him? I've always wondered that.
That's hard to say because he's somebody's son. It's a whole different situation, but I'll tell you this about Pete.
Yeah.
They fired his dad and him, and they really hated LSU. I could understand that.
Right.
So I got their address. I wrote them both a letter. I told them I'm really sorry they got the job under these conditions. It wasn't my fault. They're more than welcome. The best seating if they want to go on road trips with us. I'm sorry what happened. I'm not pleased at all about it. I wish I could have gotten the job under better circumstances. Well, nobody answered me, and I understood. They were ticked off. They were mad. They were heartbroken by it. So I thought, I'm not going to give up. So there was a local artist in town. I thought, it'd be nice if he'd paint a portrait of Bress and Pete together, then I would have at halftime, I would present it to him. That would be a father-son thing, and then I'd be out there at halftime giving it to him. Well, they did it.
Wow.
They came. Well, Pete wound up being a good friend of mine. And we're sitting in the dressing room one night. The kids have already gone to warm up, and the 2 assistants are up watching them. I mean, I don't have to watch them warm up. I've been watching them for a week practice. What I got to watch them warm up for? And we're sitting there, and Pete was a lovely guy. And he told me about he can't believe how screwed up he was. He said, I feel so terrible. He said, I drank too much. I chased girls. He said, I really got, and he said, I'm trying to come back. I'm trying to put God into my life without being a phony about it. And he said, Coach, why do you think we're this way? And I said, Pete, The first dictionary printed was in 1806, and it described success as fortunate, happy, kind, and prosperous. Now, in the year 2000, whatever it was, success in the dictionary is described as attainment of wealth, fame, rank, and power.
Jeez, wow.
Now, that's a pretty big division from 1806 to now. If you'll look it up, I know it's correct because my friend and I were working on a book. He went to the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. to make sure he got it right. And then he said, well, how did I? He said, so many people are critical of me. He said, they're running me down, and I did chase women, and I did take drugs and stuff. I smoked grass. He said, how do I handle that? I said, Pete, there's 8 billion people on Earth right now. That's the most that's ever walked the planet. Of those 8 billion, they better understand something. And I said, Pete, do you know who Oscar Wilde is? He said, no, I don't. I said, he's an Irish poet. He described all 8 billion of us perfectly. He said, every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. So don't beat yourself up with, I did wrong. He was truly a lovely human being. And sure, he screwed up. Who hasn't screwed up?
Mm-hmm.
NCA is the only people. NCA is the only people who never made a mistake in their life.
Right.
And they're about ready to fall apart. If things go right, they're going to drop the NCA and go into an organization that's got some sanity. Mm-hmm. It does not make sense that a guy can get $5 million for doing a BMW commercial and another player almost as good as him doesn't get anything.
So what does that do to their motivation now, Coach? Because, Nick Saban had mentioned that when he retired. He said,
I'll tell you what does it to the motivation.
Yep.
Tommy and Dale are on the same team.
Mm-hmm.
And you're a guard and I'm a guard. But you're getting $5 million. I want to play. I want to be a team player. Mm-hmm. But I can't help but be infected by Tommy. He's getting $5 million and I'm getting nothing. I'm a second-rate citizen. So now, who's going to step into the picture? Mark my words, gamblers.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to tell kids, listen, you're not getting anything in this name, image, and likeness business. You shave a few points, you do this. Watch what happens. I'm not trying to be a prophet or anything like that.
Right.
But I've been in the business too long, and they've screwed kids too long, and now I've always felt kids should be paid. That's not the problem. Mm-hmm. But not this ridiculous way.
Right.
LSU had a girl on her team, and a lot of people have this. So it just isn't LSU I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
She'd been in 4 schools in 4 years. 4 schools in 4 years.
What was the reason?
So there's no commitment to the schools anymore?
Yeah.
How do you get your graduation rate? You can't transfer everything from one school to another school and expect to graduate on time. And it's so sad because sports can do so many things to help people, but right now it's money, 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 money.
Absolutely.
But I wouldn't change anything. I'd come to LSU I remember I was being interviewed by Carl Maddox, who's one of the greatest human beings I've ever met in my life. And I'd just been offered the Washington State job. They just fired him and offered me the job.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why I came down here. I mean, I never dreamed I'd live in the South. And when I came down, Mr. Maddox was such a sweet guy. And what they had, Joe Dean, he used to work with Converse Rubber. Do you remember him?
Yeah. I remember the name, absolutely.
He became president of the Converse Rubber.
Yeah.
Well, he's the one that gave him my name.
Mm-hmm.
And when we came down here, I didn't have any idea about salaries or anything, and he said, he started out, he said, well, listen, here's what we can pay you. We can pay you $20,000 a year. But he said, I've got another $25,000 for you. And I thought, oh, that's for a radio show or something.
Mm-hmm.
That's $45,000. He said, to give to your 2 assistants. So one assistant got $13,000 and one got $12,000.
That's something. God.
And I'd do the same thing again.
Well, Coach, here's the thing. I want to respect your time. I just want to hit a few more points if you don't mind, but I want to.
You don't have to rush. I got all the time in the world. I'm retired.
That makes me so happy. Well, good. I'm glad. I'm glad. So, Coach, I want to talk about this amazing book, Getting Over the Four Hurdles of Life. And, I don't want to go into too much detail because I want people to actually get the book and read it. But I just want to kind of touch on the four hurdles if you have a moment.
Certainly.
But you start by talking about having a positive vision of life. That's how you kind of start the book off, and about how positive thinking is a choice. So why do so many people struggle, Coach, with with the ability to make that choice of positive thinking?
Can you hold on for 1 second? The yard man's knocking on my door. Just 1 second, I got to tell him something, okay?
Okay, no problem. This is so good. This is great. So we're waiting. Those of you watching, so far you can see why I wanted to talk to him and how important this conversation is. But we're just, I could go all day, and thank God he's not in a hurry because there's a lot more I want to talk to him about. I've got tons of stuff to talk about, so hopefully we can get to all of it. He's coming back. But yeah, if you're able to go get that book, The Four Hurdles of Life, you can get it online. It's such a wonderful, wonderful book. So much to learn from it, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment when he comes back. But it's all about overcoming life's obstacles, and he's going to go over what kind of the four main obstacles are that we deal with in life, and it's something that I try to teach my kids every day. Going back to my experience as a school teacher. The children that I work with, you can see, what their circumstances are. A lot of unimaginable circumstances.
I'm sorry, Tommy.
Okay, no problem.
You had a couple questions, and I had asked. My wife's not here today, so
I was talking to our audience, so it all worked out great. It all worked out perfectly.
I do a lot of speaking, and I've studied speakers, and I feel that they really talk too long. And I didn't want to do that. Mm-hmm. So I sat down and thought, what can I compile what are the secrets of life? Really the secrets of life. Now, I'm going to be 90 pretty soon, so I hope I got them down now. But I thought, I'm going to use as an analogy sports. Mm-hmm. So it took me some time to figure out what should I call it. And I decided to call it Getting Over the Four Hurdles of Life. Now, it doesn't make any difference what color you are. It doesn't make any difference how much money you got. The four hurdles you got to learn to jump over. And the very first hurdle you have to jump over is the hurdle I can't. Mm-hmm. Now, the hurdle I can't comes to some people pretty doggone easy. Yeah. So I tried to use analogies of people that immediately thought, I can't. And I tried to make the book also, by the way, very small.
Mm-hmm. It is small.
I didn't want it to be big. And so I took the four things, you've got to do to get over the four major. There's a bunch of hurdles, but what do you have to do to get over the four major hurdles? Mm-hmm. I can't, believing in yourself, da-da-da. How do you handle failure? How do you handle handicaps? And it was pretty darn successful, and we really didn't market it all that much either, because we did it locally here. But we sold a lot of them, I'll tell you.
Well, and you talk about the fourth one, lack of self-knowledge, kind of being the most difficult one. So why is that?
Correct. Yep, that's right.
Why is that so difficult?
Well, I think we underestimate ourselves as far the knowledge of what we should be reading and doing, and the negativity is, man, right now, who are you going to vote for President of the United States?
Oh, Coach,
I can't vote for Trump or Biden.
I don't know yet.
Hell, I'd vote for Curly, Larry, and Moe, before I'd vote for any.
Yeah.
And I've been to Washington D.C. They asked me to run for governor, and they also asked me to run in North Dakota for U.S. Senate. So I've been there,
Yeah.
and I could regurgitate in the process.
Wow. Well, let me ask you this. My kids, like I said, we talk about quitting a lot, right? And in my opinion, something I told the kids, quitting doesn't take any effort. That's why so many people do it, because it's easy, right? Quitting's easy, right? But having the will, the grit to rise above that failure, it takes effort, it takes work. And I think that's kind of the challenge for most people. So why is it, I mean, in your opinion, Coach, why do so many people quit what they're doing? Why do they quit before they've really gotten started?
I think that they've never been. That's a very difficult question to answer. Mm-hmm. Quitting is easy. For example, the difference between willing, I wish I was good looking. I wish I could be the head coach. I wish I could be the top author in the country. Wishing is like farting in a hurricane. Nothing's going to happen. Willing it, you actually go back to that word. I'll give you an example of that. Mm-hmm. I was in the Stanford area. My daughter had lived there at the time with her family. And J.K. Rowling was speaking at Stanford University, and so I thought I've definitely got to hear her speak. So she got up in front of all these Stanford kids, and she said, "You all are here today." She said, "To hear about all my success, and Harry Potter became the bestseller, and I became a multimillionaire." And she said, "By the way, I became the first billionaire author, a man or a woman." So she said, "You think it's easy? Let me tell you how easy it is." She said, I lived in London, and she said, my husband left me. She said, we couldn't sell the books. She said, they turned the electricity off. My little daughter and I about froze to death. She said, I was ready to take my book, Harry Potter, and throw it in the garbage. She said, all of a sudden, I was ready to quit. Mm-hmm. She said, there's a knock on the door. She happened to be a friend of mine. He came in and he said, how you doing? She said, well, you can see how we're doing. She said, we haven't got any heat on here. She said, I'm ready to take this manuscript and toss it in the garbage. And he said, you're not going to quit, are you? You haven't quitting anything in your life. He said, the secret in publishing a book is advertising, mm-hmm. marketing, and promoting. Have you been able to do that? She said, I spent all my time on writing it. He said, that's the deal. I've got a friend in suburbs of London. I can't think of the town now. I've got a friend there that owns a bookstore that he said, let's go there and see if he'll publish your book. So she said, I reluctantly went there. Now, I heard her graduation. So she said, I reluctantly went there. She said, I can't quit. I got to try everything there is in the market. And she said, he told me that he's going to take it. Now, at first, he can't print more than 500 books. But he knows how to advertise, market, and promote that book. If she trusts him, it'll be a bestseller. She had no choice but to trust him. She became a billionaire author. So she didn't quit. It's easy to give up on something.
It also takes a lot of self-belief, Coach, right? Because I tell my kids...
everybody's got to jump over those 4 hurdles.
Yep. And it's like I tell my kids, I say, here's the thing. The most important person that needs to believe in you is you. Because not everyone who you want
No question about that.
Not everyone who you want to believe in you will believe in you, right? So I tell the kids...
No question about that whatsoever.
Yeah, so it's like I say, thank the people who do believe in you, and the ones who don't, just ignore it. It's okay. Or you know what? Thank them too. But it's you got to be number one when it comes to your self-confidence, your belief, to achieve anything in life. You went
here. I just looked up in this.
Oh, you found? Okay, good.
In the early summer of the 2008, renowned author J.K. Rowling delivered the commencement exercises at Harvard University. Well, I heard her when she was at Stanford. Mm-hmm. She was 42 at the time, at the peak of her success as a writer of the wildly popular Harry Potter book. Ironically, her talk was on the benefits of failure. She said to her audience that as a child, she told stories to her younger sister, and even then had set her sights on being a writer. As a teenager of the mid-90s, she made a serious decision to be an outstanding poet. Then it goes on and on and on. So you have to put those things in your mind, and if you can't just wish them, you've got to let them happen. And it's hard to explain, and a lot of people will say, "Oh, that's being too evangelistic or something." I'll give you another example. When I first took the job at LSU, all my friends told me, "Dale, you're nuts. It's a football school. They've had the greatest player in the history of the game to play there. They never went to an NCAA tournament for 14 years with him there. They've had 18 out of losing seasons. You're crazy to take that job." I said, "Sounds like fun to me." They all laughed. "What do you mean?" I said, "To build something up." I said, "Everything has to start. There has to be an embryo. There has to be a situation." So in the early years, some people might have thought, well, I was being false or braggadocious when I would say, it's going to happen. But the very first meeting, I went and asked the sports information if he had an SEC media guide. So he gave it to me, and I took it home and studied it that weekend. I was going to meet with the team on Monday. I hadn't met the team yet. And they were terrible, by the way, the team. Pete has left, of course. As I looked things over, I thought, you know what? This is impossible. Kentucky has won more championships in the SEC than the entire other teams in the SEC combined. So I thought, when I have my meeting Monday morning at the dormitory with him, I'm going to play the white man's Muhammad Ali. I'm going to be real bold about it. So I got up there on the blackboard and I wrote in big as I could write, Kentucky. And I underlined it 3 times. I said, what's that represent to you all here? You know what it represents to me? The facts. In 100 years, LSU's beaten Kentucky once. They're the guys you got to go after. You don't want to go after Auburn right now. Mississippi, they're near the bottom. You guys have been on teams of 14 out of 18 losing seasons. So you've got to think big. And if you think big, Kentucky University, that's who we're going after. All right, let me tell you the situations with it. First year we go up there, we get waxed. Second year we go up there, we get waxed. Third year we go up there, we get waxed. Fourth year we go up there, we lose by 30 points at Rupp Arena. So now I'm going to the dressing room, and I'm thinking my seniors are going to be done. They're not going to have a chance. And I kicked the door and I said, don't shower, don't take your stuff off yet. I said, I failed you guys. I said, you younger guys that are coming back, I said, I'm going to make you a promise. This sounds like it's crazy. We just got beaten out in Rupp Arena by 30 points. If you believe in me, the system we're running, really do believe in it, I promise you, and I'm not trying to be the white man's Muhammad Ali, I promise you, we'll come back up here in Rupp Arena and beat them worse than they beat us. Now, how in the hell could you make a statement like that? 2 years later, guess who gave Kentucky the worst loss in the history of Rupp Arena? We did. 35 points. Guess who also has beaten Kentucky more than any other team in the country? LSU 18 times. So it sounds like a fantasy. It sounds like a chalk talk. Chalk talks don't work. You have to really believe it from the heart. Anything's possible with the mouth. But the heart's what does it, and eventually gets done.
Coach, it's a David and Goliath story, obviously, but then y'all eventually became Goliath. after after so many years. When it came to playing Kentucky, you sure did. You sure did. Real quick, Coach, you had emailed me when we spoke initially. You emailed me your thoughts on life, a collection. It's hundreds and hundreds of thoughts of life, and I picked out a few of them just to save time. I picked out a few of them that I want to touch on. You talked about love and happiness, and you said large doses of love sprinkled with discipline is true leadership, and that really makes me think about my kids and my students, because I know that they're not getting enough of that at home. So it kind of made me really look in the mirror and think about my role even closely as a teacher and how I need to, practice that with them. That idea with them.
Yeah. That stuff I sent you, I wrote a book about it, and that was just some of the excerpts of the book that I wrote about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. You said, do not wait for your ship to come in, swim out to it.
Yep, that's another one. You're right. And then the other one I used to like was, you'll not find the true fiber of a man in times of prosperity or success, but only in the resiliency and attitude toward times of failure and adversity.
Well, you just described yourself, Coach, your whole life. You described yourself from day one with that. I really think
that happened,
really
and I didn't want to be mean to that guy that interviewed me, about I shouldn't have had the job and everything, But I thought, if I sound weak or anything, people are going, that guy's a wimp. And I thought, I'm not gonna let this guy knock me down. So that's when I said, I'm elated that the people come out of a coma around here, which they've been watching football the whole time. We will win. Well, I'll be damned. Football had 6 losing seasons in a row, and we had 17 winning seasons.
Yeah. God. Coach, when it comes to your recruiting, when you used to recruit, how would your recruiting style be different today, or would it still be the same?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'd be a very good coach right now. I can't. I could not expect. Am I going to run the program, or is the guy that gave $5 million to a kid going to run the program?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is the gambler's going to run the program?
Mm-hmm.
A kid doesn't. I'll give you another example why I don't think I'd be successful right now. They can go any place they want, and they're just like that. They don't have to sit out a year or anything. There's no loyalty to the school. And this is confidential, but I'm going to tell you the story.
Mm-hmm.
We had a kid on the team that's really a good player, and he would never take a charge on our defensive end. He would never play help defense, come from the weak side to the strong side. So I told him, I'm going to bench him. I said, you got to do it. And he was a real good player, and he wouldn't do it. So his mother and father asked to come and meet with me. They were polite, and they came to my office, and they said, well, why are you benching our son? I said, it's very simple. I said, he will never take a charge. I said, there's a loose ball, and we have a rule on loose ball. Before it goes out of bounds, if you can't get it, jump for it and try to tip it for a teammate. That means you might have to land on your stomach. He'll never do it. Well, I certainly hope not, the mother says to me. And I said, what? I certainly hope not he wouldn't do that. She wasn't brought up that way.
Mm.
Well, then I suggest he transfer.
Wow.
So that wouldn't be mean or selfish or anything else. There's certain things you got to do.
Jeez. Well, Coach, again, I want to respect your time, so I want to kind of end with talking about, one of my idols growing up, and that would be Chris Jackson, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf now, formerly Chris Jackson. What kind of stories
you brought up
tell
something
me?
Now you're going to make me cry. Let me tell you about Chris Jackson.
Yes.
He never knew who his father was.
Mm-hmm.
He thought he was probably a local white pharmacist, but he wasn't sure, or a barber, which one of the two. He lived in absolute poverty, didn't get the right food or anything. he was a remarkable guy. He got money offered to him. He told me this when he visited, and he says, "Coach, I don't want to be a pimp." I said, "Well, you're going to have a scholarship here. You're going to have a job. I promise you that. But you're not going to get anything." But the same thing, if your insurance doesn't cover it, I don't care what the NCAA does. If you're sick or something, I'm going to cover it.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not going to get anything illegal, anything. Well, he was just lovely, lovely. So he picked up the phone one night and heard his mother on the extension. And this one university said, "We know you're poor and what have you, and we've got a guy down in Gulfport that's going to give you $250,000. He made up his mind right then. He had a friend of his from school drive him to the LSU campus. And he said, "Coach, I don't want to be a pimp." He said, I want to do what's right. I'm coming to LSU. That's how we got Chris Jackson. And let me tell you his story. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you read his book or not.
I did. Absolutely did. Of course I did.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you the whole story on that. Before he went to Denver, mm-hmm. I knew the owner of the team. Bertman was his name. Bertman, I believe. And Doug Moe was the coach. Mm-hmm. So I called them both and I said, "Listen, I've never been around a kid. He's got the Bible all the time. He reads it. He doesn't date anybody. He doesn't drink. He doesn't smoke. He doesn't swear." I said, "He's a very sensitive kid, but he has a disease called the Tourette syndrome." Mm-hmm. And he shakes his head and he barks and stuff. But you never swear at him, and you never put your armor, and you always put your armor on him. He'll do whatever you want to do. So they were very, oh, God, they said, "That's a big help to us." They said, "This kid's going to start for us. He'll be all NBA." So I'll be danged, within months, they sold the team. Mm-hmm. Doug Moe no longer was the coach. Bertman no longer was the owner. Then they hired another guy as general manager and et cetera. So I get a call from the Rocky Mountain News, and I don't remember the guy's name. But he said, "I wonder if you could," he said, "the new general manager made a statement today about your player, Chris Jackson." "What about him?" He said, "Here's what he said." "Hold on, let me grab it. Here it is." He says, "If Chris Jackson expects to make it in this league, he better put down his Bible and pick up the damn basketball, or he ain't going to make it." I said, "What? Who said that? Who said that?" He said, "The general manager." I said, "Well, that's really a wrong way of handling. It's not going to work." Excuse me, I got a cold. So I called the guy, and I told him, I said, "You just made the biggest mistake in your life. This kid doesn't have no father figure. All you have to do is tell him what to do, and he'll do it." Well, as a result, he was scared, and he was alone with the black Muslims, mm-hmm. came, invited him to the church and what have you. And so then that became a big issue. But
right.
he was Steph Curry before Steph Curry was Steph Curry.
Yep.
A devout. He'd on the airplane he'd have the Bible. He'd look at the whole thing. Mm-hmm. At Christmas and Thanksgiving, my wife would make up food baskets. He'd always go with me to poor homes and deliver it. And he told me, "Someday I'm going to do this," which he's done. He's given millions of dollars to poor people. They burned his house down in Mississippi.
Yep.
A brand new house he was building, a part of the Ku Klux Klan. So he's that book is 100% accurate. He was Steph Curry before Steph Curry was Steph Curry. You take Steph Curry, I'll take Chris Jackson. I'm going to beat you more than you're going to beat me.
I'll take Chris Jackson any day. Any day of the week, I'd take Chris Jackson.
No question. He can do it all.
Absolutely.
And always smiling and quiet and always on time and just a good human being.
Right.
Very, very articulate.
Coach, I'm so happy you shared those stories because, like I said, I grew up idolizing him, and to hear these stories coming from you, who was close to him, just really I can't tell you how happy that makes me to hear these stories. We're going to end.
Well, they don't come better than him.
No.
He's just a lovable human being.
Right. Well, I'm so happy to hear that. Let's end on this, Coach.
It's the system.
It's a system. Yeah. Coach, what are your days like now? You're retired. What's kind of a day in the life of Coach Brown now these days?
I do a lot of charity work.
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot of reading myself, and I don't know why, because I'm not very smart in some things, but I'll read science books. If something interests me, if you saw my library with me, well, this is a library of 10 different people.
Yep.
And I'm really, you talk about retardation, I'm retarded. I don't know anything mechanically around the house. Mm-hmm. If something goes wrong, I can't fix it. I have to get a plumber or somebody else in. But I love to read.
I do too.
And then I spend a lot of time on the phone with former players. Mm-hmm. 13 of my players have died, by the way.
Goodness.
In my career at LSU.
Goodness gracious.
So I was 25 years there, and I've been retired now 25 years. So.
Well, Coach, I got to tell you,
but it's full. It's full. I don't have a spare minute.
That's good,
and I'm happy it's that way.
That's, you know what, Coach, it's funny because, my mom was the same way. She had stopped, she was sick, so that's why she kind of couldn't, really work. But if she had it her way, she would have kept on working. She loved to work, and that's just kind of, just her thing. She just loved work. She just believed in being productive and always being busy. And so, but yeah, Coach, I tell you what, I'm going to call our mutual buddy, Pat Boris. One day we're going to come down. We're going to come take you to lunch. We're going to come to Baton Rouge. We're going to take you to lunch. I'm going to bring Pat down.
You should come down to a basketball game this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I should. Yeah, I will.
The coach is one of the nicest men you ever want to meet.
I will.
He was so badly damaged by the last coach of the penalties they gave him, but
I'm sure.
But he's the kind of coach you'd want your son or grandson to play for.
Fantastic. That's fantastic.
What town do you live?
So
now, you sent me your address, didn't you?
No, I'm in Houston. Coach. I've got.
Send me your address. You got my email.
I will.
And then there was something I was going to send you too. What was it?
It was information about a book we talked about at the very beginning. And I have to go back. I'll have to go back and listen to the recording. I can't remember because we talked about, so I can't remember the name of the book, but it's in there. So I'll go back and listen, and then I'll email you. Once
can't even remember what I'm talking about.
but yeah, Coach, I have family in close to Baton Rouge, and so I'm there. I guess every few months or so, I got family there. Not
Are
far
you
from
Greek?
where you're at. I am Greek. I'm absolutely Greek.
That's a Greek name in mine.
Dinos, yeah, Dinos, and Pat, our buddy Pat's Greek as well. I've known him for many years. But I'm just so happy that he got me in touch with you, Coach, and this has been a blessing. This whole conversation has been, way more than I expected.
You've been a delight. You've answered. You've asked good questions.
That means a lot. I really appreciate that. I mean, this, like I said, this is 35 years in the making, and it was well worth the wait, Coach. I'm going to keep in touch with you. I've got your number, I've got your email address. I'm going to keep in touch with you.
You're not bothering me now, so you've got my email address and both my numbers, don't you?
I sure do. Yes, sir. Absolutely do. Absolutely
and
do.
then you sent me your cell too, I believe.
Yes, and I will send you
your email.
Yes, I'm going to send you my address as well.
Okay. And so send me everything, and don't be afraid to call if you misunderstand. There was something else I was going to tell you. What was it? One more thing.
Yes, absolutely.
My mother was a saint.
Mm-hmm.
She was a beautiful human being. And she always taught me to be honest. You're just honest. Be honest. Say what you think. I can't, because the landladies and the welfare worker and what have you. So one day I came home and the welfare worker was there. And I'm there for soup. My school was only a few blocks from there, elementary. I was 9 or 10. And she was making my mother cry. And she said, what do you do with all this money we give you $42.50 a month. Go get your purse. My mother was a gentle, sensitive, loving human being. She went and got her purse. She was crying, and I remember eating the soup and looking at that woman, and I thought, never in my life will I ever see anyone intimidated in any way. And I'm a 9-year-old boy. How am I going to get that from happening?
Mm-hmm.
So after she left, she cried, and Mama, I'm going to protect you, Mama. So 2 weeks later, I came home, and she was all nervous, and she said, the landlady came down today and threatened to kick us out of here because I didn't have a basketball, so I take mittens and put tape on them, shooting the hot water pipes in the hallway. And you're too young to remember what linoleum is, probably.
No, not really. Not really.
Oh, you remember. Well, she said, your brat's scuffing up the linoleum in the hall. And my mother says, she's ringing you, said, what should we do, son? I took off down the hall, 4 security block, and I knocked on her door, and she opened it, and I'm 10 now. I said, you leave my mother alone. Don't you ever talk to her like that. Then I went down the hall, scuffing the linoleum with my heels as badly as I could. So, seeing the injustices, but final thing, probably one of the things that has brought me the most happiness in the world was this. My mother, with 4 months, died before she came to live with us here. And so I never was ever able to give her anything. So after she died and I started to make money, I didn't make any money at all, but I started to make money with speeches and then basketball camp. I was getting 1,500 kids for 3 weeks. I was getting 1,500 kids to the basketball camp. So I called my niece who lives in North Dakota, and I said, do me a favor. Find out how much Grandma Brown got from the welfare. She said, what for? Just find out over the years the money they gave her for that $42.50 a month. So she said, okay. So she called me back within a few days. She told me. So I said, all right, give me the address of the Ward County Welfare. For what? I said, I'm sending them a check for the total amount. My mother's never going to be on welfare again. So I sat down and wrote a check. It made me feel so good. Now, at $42.50 a month for 50 years, whatever it was worth it.
Absolutely.
So she's not on welfare now in heaven.
Just hearing you talk about your mom reminds me of my mother. Like you said, my mom, like yours, was a saint as well. I mean, she was the glue that kept our family together. And when she passed, last year, unexpectedly, unfortunately,
how old was she?
She was 82. She was 82. But I mean, she was in she had been sick, but her mind was, of course, sharp. I mean, she read all the time. That's kind of where I got my love of reading was from my mother, right? She read all the time, always had a book. And so, but Coach, one lesson that she taught me that I think about all the time was she told me that you can never go wrong doing the right thing.
Oh, that's right. We had a lot of Greeks in mind for a little town of 20,000. The Maragoses, the Contoses, and I can name them.
A lot
all
of the
business people, successful.
A lot of the Oses in the Greek, the Greek names. But mine was actually shortened from my grandfather when he moved to the U.S. from Greece. So my last name was actually Kopandinos, and changed it to Dinos, which is a lot easier to pronounce.
Demos or Demos?
Dinos, D-E-N-O-S. Dinos.
D-E-N-O-S.
Yes,
okay.
sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Well, you're delightful. To be honest with you, most interviews are boring as heck, but everything you asked me interested me and had depth to it. So
thank you, Coach. That means so much.
It was a pleasure doing it.
Likewise.
And how long have we talked, by the way?
Coach, we've been going, about an hour and a half, I would say. About an hour and a half.
You've got to be kidding me. An hour and a half?
About an hour and a half. I'm sure you got better things to do, Coach, with your retirement than spend an hour and a half.
No, I have not got better. That blows my mind.
We have. Hadn't felt like it.
I'm going to email you some stuff, and I think Walter Byers might be in that.
Okay.
His statement. He even asked me to write when he wrote that book, if I'd write
The
what do you call
forward
that
or whatever,
thing
like the
when you-
forward or introduction.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
But he even turned on him.
Wow.
And that was their specialty. They practiced. They were the masters at hypocrisy and just not knowing anything about the human spirit. Didn't mean anything to them.
Mm. Well, Coach, you definitely embody that. You certainly embody that, and you know, my guarantee is that when people listen to this conversation, I mean, they're gonna just have their minds blown. They're gonna learn so much about themselves. I'm sure lessons they never even learned, throughout their life.
I have to tell you one more story, my
okay,
friend.
absolutely. Go for
before
it.
we go.
Absolutely.
To show you what, now I'm making my mother out as a saint, and she was a saint. But she was gone one night. We had no television, no radio. We did finally buy a $15 radio, which I thought was a big deal. So I noticed she had a Bible on her table stand there. So I went to pick it up, and a letter fell out of it on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
So I never read the letter, but the address said Charles A. Brown, 302 East Ash, Enid, Oklahoma.
Mm.
I had no idea who it was. So when she came home and made the chocolate and cinnamon toast for us, that was a big deal. I'm going to tell you one more story before I let you go about my mother.
Okay.
We're sitting there talking, and I said, Mama, who's Charles A. Brown? I didn't know his name.
Mm-hmm.
She said, that's your father. I said, that's not my father. Is that your husband? She said, yes. And I said, what kind of man was he, Mama? Oh, he was a good man. She said he worked hard. He treated your two older sisters. I had two sisters, 11 and 12 years older than me. He was a good man. She said he was always working and helping us, and he was never nice. He was never mean or anything. I said, well, if he was so nice, why did he leave us? She said he fell in love with another woman. Mm. So now I was already had a chip on my shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
So if she told me how bad he was or something, I'd really had a chip on the other shoulder. I'd have probably been in prison beating the hell out of him.
So she just never...
But she was a unique woman.
Yeah. She just never wanted to say anything bad to you about your father.
No, she sure didn't.
She was just that kind of person.
Well, you got a story you can write for a week on this one.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, I've got so much.
But you're good. You're good with questions. All your questions were meaningful.
Well, I really appreciate that. Like I said, that means so much coming from you. And
I get so sick of hearing, oh, tell me about when you beat Kentucky to go to the Final Four, and that bores me.
Well, I'm sure you get a lot of just straight basketball questions.
Yeah.
You know, I like more philosophical. I like more, just conversation about success and how you became who you were, right? I mean, the basketball stuff that stuff I can just go watch on YouTube. I can watch highlights if I want.
That's the way I am too.
But I just love having a conversation, just getting, just to know someone, deep diving into who they really are and why.
Okay, I'm going to give you a test, my friend. Are you ready to close out?
Yes.
The first Webster Dictionary. How did it describe success?
It talked about was it peace? Just nothing. So it talked about non-material success, Coach. Non-material. Let me just kind of sum up. I can't remember word for word. Right.
Happy, kind, and prosperous. Now,
there we go.
In the year 2024, what does the dictionary say?
Now it's more about financial, material, all those kinds of things.
Correct. Attainment of wealth, fame, rank, and power.
I will have them memorized next time we talk. We talked about so much.
I believe that, you rascal.
I will. I absolutely will. But I will definitely have those memorized the next time we talk.
You're so good. Most of the time I get so bored on interviews because they talk about a game or something, or
and you have to
it's boring. There's no meat to it.
Well,
the game, which game you talking about? I coach hundreds of them.
Well, I can tell you, Coach, just, I know you've impacted gosh, I mean, countless people's lives, not only your players, but just people around the world. I know you've done a lot of great work for so many people. I know you've done a lot of work for kids. Is there anything you want to talk about, like your charity work that you've done for kids? While we're still on the line here.
Is there what? I'm sorry.
Is there any work that you'd like to talk about that you've done, for kids? Any charity work that you've done for kids?
Well, we raised total amount $800,000 for the Dale Brown Enterprises to help poor people. Either get them a place to stay, get them to college, take care of their mother. I was proud of that, and I was going to tell you this. Out of the clear sky, and this would be interesting because nobody had ever talked to this person, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. But out of the clear sky, I get a call from this kid I teached in Berkeley, California, a junior high kid. Wish I had his number. Where is it? Let me see if I've got it. You should call him because that'd be interesting to see what he had to say. How in the world he tracked me down, and
where was he from?
Well, if I Berkeley, find it, right? I'll send it to you. Right now, I don't have it. But
you say he's from Berkeley. You said
Berkeley, California.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he lives in Richmond now, if memory serves me right.
Okay. Yeah, let me know. Yeah, when you find his information.
But it was an interesting story. Just out of the clear skies, how in the world? I said, that's 55 years ago. He said, I just remembered how nice you were to me, he said. And I said, how'd you get my number? And now they got ways of getting numbers, I guess. Let me look in the front and see if I've got his number.
Yeah, well, it's interesting.
Well, I'll look for it, and if I've got it, I'll send it to you. You should talk to him, curious.
Absolutely.
Here's a little note. Junior high guy.
What's interesting how you said that he remembered you after all these years. It's like I tell my students, Coach, what do you want to be remembered for? Right? Your reputation is everything. Your character is everything. In 10, 15, 20 years, do you want people to talk about you as the kid who just kind of clowned around all day in class, who wasn't respectful to others, didn't do his work? Or do you want to be known as someone who had the good character, right? Someone who helped people, someone who put in effort, someone who worked hard, right? And I tell the kids, I mean, that's what you want to be remembered for. I mean, your reputation follows you everywhere you go.
And you don't advertise it every time you do it.
Absolutely. 100% right. 100% right. Absolutely.
And I used to tell the team this, and they would laugh when I would tell them. Their memory would be short, but I'd say, listen, if you need a helping hand, look at the end of your arm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's really true.
God, that's so profound. I mean, it really is.
Did you ever meet John Wooden?
I would have loved to have met him. Unfortunately, no. I didn't have the honor of meeting him. But I know how important he was to you, though.
He's something.
I know how important he was to you.
He was something. I mean, nicest, kindest, gentlest.
Yeah.
No vanity whatsoever.
Very gentle, as you said. Very, very gentle guy. And, from what I gathered, he was, kind of like a father figure to you.
He told me one time, I was always taking notes to him, and when I was with him, and he told me, Dale, he said, if you truly do your best, he said, and only you will know when you are successful. He said, doing the very best you're capable of doing is victory in itself, and less than that is defeat. And he said, that's how I wanted to coach. I just wanted to do my very best. And, there was a big move to fire him.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to the guy that was in the chair that was one of the guys that was going to do it.
I tell my kids, Coach, another thing I tell my kids, because that made me think of something else now that I always teach my kids, is when you go home at the end of the day, you need to ask yourself, did you have a productive day? Did you put in your best effort? Did you give your best today? Right?
Yep.
You have to ask yourself that question at the end of the day. If you truly want to be successful, you truly want to achieve things, you've got to care enough to ask yourself that question. And obviously, if your answer is no, then you got to work that much harder the next day. That's something else I try to impart on the kids. That same idea.
Tommy, I still do this.
Yeah.
I still do this. When you get what you want and struggle in that man in the glass, I still look in the man in the glass and repeat that poetry some days when I remember.
Talk about the man in the glass, Coach, for those who might not know exactly what you're talking about for our audience.
If you get what you want and struggle for self and the world makes you king for a day, just go to the mirror and look at yourself. See what that man has to say. It isn't your mother, your father, your sweetheart whose judgment upon you must pass. The person whose verdict counts most in your life is the one staring back from the glass. Oh, yeah, you may get pats on the back as you pass, but your final reward will be heartache and tears if you've cheated the man in the glass.
Jeez. I mean, how do you even respond to that? I mean, it's that simple. The idea is simple.
It's very, 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 very simple. I guess one of the problems, I grew up in North Dakota, being blunt, and I maybe silence sometimes would be right, but then I read a quote by Harry Edwards. Do you know Harry Edwards?
I've heard of Harry Edwards.
One of the great civil rights icons of all time. He said, silence has always been evil's greatest ally. So it's easy to be. I didn't have to fight the NCAA. I'll send you some stuff on that.
Okay.
Too about. And then the bizarre thing I think I told you. Guess who was in my house for over 2 hours 2 months ago? Lester Earl.
Lester Earl
came and told me he wants to be a coach and help kids, and he's sorry, and he'll never forget when I said I forgive him. He said that made me feel good, and he said I lied because Kansas told me to lie, and he said they were the ones that were directing it, and he said I was scared and didn't have a dad. So I said, well, we all make mistakes. And then I gave him the Oscar Wilde quote, every saint has a past and every sinner has a future.
Coach, why is it so hard for people to forgive, though? I mean, kind of after what Lester Earl did, obviously, he was, like you said, he was young and he was taken advantage of, obviously, by some shady people.
He was.
But, why is forgiveness so hard for some people?
That's a very good question, and I'm going to read something to you. In fact,
okay.
I was writing this morning in this book I wrote, a collection of thoughts on life. Listen to this. Hold on. Let me find it here, and then we'll end our dissertation we're giving here.
No problem. It's been great.
There's an old quote, and I don't know who to give it credit to, but the media bombarded me with questions that, well, why did you ever forgive Lester Earl? And I said, I remember reading an old quote a long time ago. It says, nothing is so beneficial as the true knowledge of ourselves. And I don't want to be a chip on my shoulder for something this kid was young and got talked into doing. It wasn't his fault. But I'm looking for this. If you hold on for a second.
It's okay. Not a problem. But he's doing pretty well today, though, right?
You'll never believe what he's doing.
What's that?
He's helping these little kids. And there was a time that I really wanted to punch his damn nose in, to be honest. I couldn't believe what he did.
Right.
and he's totally changed in the NCAA. He was trying to hold on to his career. He came from a poor family and trying to support them. And the NCAA was a crooked, rotten organization.
Right.
Trying to find that quote if you'll hold on
Absolutely.
1 minute.
No, go ahead. Take your time. Your time. We've been going, Coach, we're pushing 2 hours. How's that?
Here it is. Here's one of my favorite quotes, and it's anonymous. It's not an easy matter to gain the applause of the world, but it's a lot easier than to gain the unqualified approval of oneself. And just like I said, nothing's as easy as self-deceit.
Exactly right. And you see it all over social media.
The only conquest that brings peace, happiness, and success is conquest of ourselves.
Yep, absolutely. But that takes effort, though, and not everybody's willing to do that, Coach. That's the problem. It takes effort. You know.
But anyway, well, you are a delight to talk to.
Thank you so much, Coach. Likewise. We're going to stay in touch.
You're 100%. Right. Finally found the longest quote I wanted to give you.
Go ahead.
Edgar Guest is one of my favorite poets.
Okay.
I finally found it. Here it is. I have to live with myself. And I want to be fit for myself to know. I want to be able to, as the days go by, to look myself straight in the eye. I do not want to stand in the setting sun and hate myself for the things I've done. I want to be able to go out with my head erect. I want to be able to deserve other people's respect. For here in this struggle for fame and self, I want to be able to like myself. I don't want to take a look at myself and know that I'm all bluster and an empty show. I know what others may never know and may never see. I want to be self-respecting and conscience-free. That's my goal in my life, Edgar Guest.
That should be all of our goals for our life, Coach, to be
pretty powerful, isn't it?
Conscious-free, absolutely. Wow. Well, I can tell you this. Our audience is
going to Have you ever met Shaquille?
I have not. No, I'm dying to meet Shaquille. I'm dying to meet Mahmoud. Those are two people who I'm dying to meet someday. Dying to meet them.
Two of the greatest people I've ever met in my life. They're beautiful, beautiful people.
Yeah.
Never had a problem with either one of them. Shaquille got his doctorate degree, you know.
He sure did. Yeah, absolutely he did. Dr. Shaquille O'Neal.
And when people write, so many people don't write the depth. They'll talk about the games and all that stuff. I don't care whether he hit a shot with 6 seconds to go, and that bores me. You know, to get into the person's personality.
Right.
And his mother, by the way, I'll recommend this to you. Her name is Lucille.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
She doesn't go by Harrison anymore.
Okay.
She's called Lucille O'Neal, and he was always the demanding guy, the sergeant, you know. But she called me. She didn't have a lot of confidence. She was always quiet and kind of humble. But she wrote a book, Walk Like You Know Where You're Going. Mm-hmm. It's really, I think that's the name of it. You should order that.
I will. Yeah, I'm going to look it up and for sure order it. And anything you recommend to me, I'm going to read it.
Yeah, it's really a good book. She talks about how she came out of her rut, you know, living with him. He was the sergeant. It was something like act like you know where you're going, or walk like you know where you're going, mm-hmm. something like that.
And like you said, she was
Lucille.
Yeah,
she was
the glue of the family, like you said.
She made that family.
Yeah.
And the sergeant did a lot of good things too, but he was a sergeant. He could get a little overbearing at times.
Do you think, though, Coach, that Sergeant Harrison is, you know, kind of the dad that a lot of our kids today would need? What do you think?
Well, he knew not to play with me.
And he was a big guy. He was a big guy, too.
Yeah, he knew not to play with me. That,
yeah.
You know, if I said something, I meant it, and I didn't want to suspend kids and do things, but There's rules you got to keep, and as I say, I remember the rules when I didn't go on that damn trip.
Yeah.
Sat out in the driveway with my suitcase or gym bag, crying, watching them walk off. And now to tell you how paranoid I am, if you and I are going to go have lunch together, Tommy,
right?
I always got to get there 15 to 30 minutes early. It's just in my bones.
Yeah.
I remember them tearing that eligibility slip up and me sitting in that driveway and not watching them. And boy, if I tell you I'm going to meet you at 3, I'll guarantee I'll be there by 2:30.
It's all about accountability, Coach, holding yourself accountable.
Yeah. Well, you're a good guy, and I'm anxious to see your work.
Well, thank you, Coach. When we have this all finished and edited and everything, I will send you the link. You can check it out, too.
Oh, good.
I'll send you the link for sure. I think you're going to...
And anyone that says to you, oh, that ain't true, say, oh, is that right? Well, here's what we'll do. Dale Brown said he'd take a, what the hell you call it? Polygraph? Not a polygraph.
Yeah, the polygraph. Yeah, the lie detector.
Polygraph, yes, yeah. See if you're ready to do the same thing and you're saying it's not true to them.
Absolutely.
Okay, my friend.
Yes, sir. Coach,
enjoy visiting with you.
What a blessing. God bless you. Thank you so much. I'm going to be in touch with you.
And the same here. You're a good man.
Likewise. This has been such a treat, Coach. You take care, okay?
Okay. Bye, Tommy.
Bye-bye, Coach. Thanks. Bye-bye. Oh, wow. I'm not really sure what to even say. I mean, I didn't know how much time we'd have, to be honest with you, with Coach. And I was thinking maybe 30 minutes. I was hoping for an hour. We've gone, gosh, almost 2 hours. So you can see exactly why this was definitely worth waiting 35 years to talk to this man. And gosh, I mean, if you didn't learn anything from this conversation today, I'm not really sure what to tell you. But it's my wish that you will share this conversation with anyone you know who you think could benefit from it, especially our younger kids. I mean, this is a very important man. You can see why he was very important to me. And like he's living proof. It doesn't matter how your life starts, right? It's the choices that you make. It's what you make of it, right? And the choices that you make to overcome, right, those 4 hurdles. And I please go get his book, 4 Hurdles of Life. It's a quick read. It's a small book. Does not take long. You could probably read it in one sitting. But it's something that I highly, highly recommend. In fact, to be honest with you, I think that book and his collection of thoughts on life should be a school curriculum, to be honest with you. I think the book should be required reading for at least the high school level, and for certainly college. Corporations could use it too. But my goodness, I'm it's not often I'm speechless, but I'm speechless right now. What a conversation. What a guy. And I can't wait to stay in contact with him, because believe it or not, for as long as we talked, I didn't get to every single thing I wanted to talk about, but I wanted to respect his time. But thank God he enjoyed the conversation enough to want to keep going, and just made me feel I'm on cloud 9 right now. Getting to talk with him. So please share this episode. Very special thanks to my man Quincy here at Sacred Stone Studios for hosting our podcast today. I love the setup. He's been wonderful. We've stayed in touch. We've been very, very, in fact, clear communication, everything that I'm looking for, and he has absolutely delivered. I cannot wait to see the final product. So thank you, Quincy. Very special thank you to my wonderful friend of many, many years, Pat Boris, for connecting me with Coach Brown and always getting things done. I love you, my friend. Another special thank you to the LSU athletic department for all the photographs that you saw of Coach Brown and Shaq, Pete Maravich, and Mahmoud Abdul Rauf. Very special thank you to all of you who have watched and listened to this conversation today. This is all for you. Right? Like I said, this is something I've wanted to do for so many years, but this conversation is definitely for all of you, and I'm very happy to have brought Coach Brown into your lives, and I hope that you feel the same way. If you're watching this conversation on YouTube, please like it. Please leave a comment, subscribe, comment with your thoughts and takeaways. I know you've got to have tons of thoughts and takeaways. So please leave your comments. I'd love to know what you think. Please subscribe to our channel at Plan A Creations on YouTube. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please follow us at the Deep Dishin Podcast. You can see how it's spelled right behind me, and leave a review. We'd really appreciate it. And of course, again, thank you to Coach Dale Brown. What a guy. For your time, your generosity, your wisdom. I feel better for this interview, for this conversation. And I know it wasn't an interview. I see it as a conversation. You saw we were just two guys talking about life. And, you know, I wish more of us could have that kind of communication with people. I know we're always on our phones, texting and, you know, social media, all these things. But if we can get back to just basic human interaction, communication, like we just had today, just two people talking about life. I mean, it's the world's going to be such a better place, so much better. Anyway, thank you all again, and join us next time for another slice of the Deep Dishin Podcast. God bless. Thanks.